In today's video, I'm going to speak about what you can expect to experience in pretty much any interview that you're going to go to. More specifically, I'm going to speak about types of questions that you'll be asked, and secondly, what you need to prepare for before the interview itself. Number one is the why. You're going to walk in and very early on, you'll be asked, why did you apply for this job? Or more specifically, what made you apply for a role with this company? So you need to make sure you understand the company. You've been on Google, you've researched who works there, you've researched their recent accomplishments, the facilities. If you understand this stuff and you can hold a conversation on it, that's a really good start to the interview. Number two, tell us about. The panel wants to get to know you. So they'll ask something like, tell us about yourself, or tell us about how your passion for this area started. You need to have a story ready for this. If you mumble your way through this, it's not a great start. What you need to do is rehearse a very concise background story. What is concise? Well, 45, maybe 60 seconds where you speak about where does your passion come from, what have you done over the years to build your experience and knowledge in this area, and what are your plans going forward. The next point is knowledge. You're going to get questions about, well, what is your understanding of this area? For example, it could be a research topic, it could be a hot topic, or procedures. So for example, a practical skill. It could also just be an opinion as well. So I'll give you an example here. Let's say you're going for a job as a physiotherapist in the Premier League. You could be asked, well, we've noticed in the past 6 months there's been a huge spike in muscle injuries. Well, what's your opinion as a physiotherapist? Why do you think this is happening? They're not necessarily looking for a correct answer because there isn't one for this question, but it's more about your experience as a physiotherapist and your general knowledge as well to gauge professional opinion. So when it comes to preparation, very simple, just know your shit. That doesn't mean being an expert. You can't know everything that you're asked in an interview and be open about that, but the more you can understand about the science and the principles behind the job you're going for, the better. Number 4, can you think of a time? You'll get situational questions like this, and these are endless, so it's hard to put this into a video. But generic examples would be, you provided excellent customer service, or a time you solved a really complex problem, or when you worked in a team, or even individually as well. So my advice here is visualize scenarios. This is easier if you've done the job before. Think about what you've done in the past, how you responded to that. If you've never done this job before, it's the first job you've gone for in this area, go and speak to someone who's done it, who's got experience in it, and just try and understand it a little bit more. Number 5, how would you cope with, and again, endless possibilities here, depends on the job, but an example could be long working hours. For example, if you work in professional football, it's 60 hours a week, or it could be the pressure. If you're doing a PhD, you might get asked in an interview, well, this is high stress, high pressure. Well, how would you deal with that? So what you need to do is understand the role, know the role. If you go in there and didn't realize that you're supposed to do 60 hours a week, 50 hours working in football, and you say, oh, I didn't know that, it's not a great impression to the panel. You need to understand this job inside out if you can. If you don't, that's when you can ask questions later on within the interview. Number 6 is the plan. You'll get asked a question towards the end such as, well, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Or how would you plan to develop with us if you plan to stay there long term? And my advice here would be, before the interview, think about your goals, think about your plan going forward. If you just say, well, I'll go with the flow and see what happens in the next few months, that's not very inspiring. And finally, questions from you. You've been asked loads of questions, you've been under the cosh, now it's your turn. And a common one could be, how much will I get paid? I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm not saying don't ask that. For me personally, I wouldn't. You don't get much time to ask questions in interviews, they're usually trying to push you out the door and bring the next person in, so I need to be quick here and find out some more intricate stuff. I would ask something like, well, how do you plan to grow as a company in the next few years? They put that question on you, how do you plan to develop? Well, it works both ways. Is this a good place to work? How are you going to develop? Or it could be, is it possible to get involved with additional activities? So for example, if you're watching this and you're going for an internship soon, you don't want to be a slave and do crazy hours, but let's say it's part-time. If you can offer within that interview at the end, you'll do an extra 5 hours working with a different age group or a different sport, just showing that you're willing to do a bit more may make you stand out a little bit within that interview. So my final point of the 7, prepare questions. Don't try and wing it during the interview and expect to think of some questions during. You could be too nervous and you're trying to focus on the interview itself. So beforehand, write down 2 or 3 questions. Even put them in your pocket if you want. There's no shame getting some paper out at the end saying, oh, you hear my questions, I just wrote them down. And finally, go through this list multiple times. Don't just do 2 or 3 of these areas and hope for the best. You need to make sure all these points are accounted for. Thank you for watching this. I've got plenty of videos on my channel in relation to job interviews. If you'd like to learn more about this area, or you want me to do a video about a specific area, please get in touch with me on Instagram at Sports Science Hacks. Okay, thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you again soon.